This story might seem like a simple blind date, but it quickly spirals into something you won't believe when a 52-year-old woman lays out her shocking demands. John Carter, a 60-year-old retired engineer, was cautiously optimistic when he agreed to a blind date. After years of solitude, he finally felt ready to open his heart again. The idea of meeting someone new, someone who might understand his journey, was both exciting and nerve-wracking. What started as a casual coffee meetup with a woman named Lisa quickly turned into a jaw-dropping experience that left John questioning everything he thought he wanted in a relationship. Lisa, confident and poised, seemed charming at first, but when she began outlining her vision for a relationship, John found himself sitting across from a person whose expectations were more like a business contract than a blossoming romance. Before the date was over, Lisa presented four demands that left John with only one choice: to politely excuse himself and run away. What were these demands? And why did they leave John so unsettled? Stay tuned as we unpack this astonishing story of love, expectations, and a blind date gone wrong. For John, this blind date wasn't just about meeting someone new. It was about taking a leap of faith. After spending years alone, he yearned for companionship, someone to share his quiet evenings in the next chapter of his life. The stakes were high. If the date went well, it could mark the beginning of a meaningful relationship, bringing back the joy and connection he had missed for so long. But if it didn't, John risked not only the disappointment of another failed attempt, but also the emotional toll of reopening old wounds and questioning his readiness to trust again. For Lisa, too, the stakes seemed equally significant. At 52, she had her own set of expectations, clear, structured, and non-negotiable. While her demands might seem unusual to some, to her they were essential. She wasn't just looking for love, she was looking for security, validation, and a partnership on her terms. As the date unfolded, John realized that these stakes weren't just emotional, they were also practical. Lisa's demands carried implications that went beyond the boundaries of a typical relationship. Could he meet her halfway, or would these conditions push him away entirely? What seemed like a simple coffee date soon became a high-stakes encounter, testing John's values, boundaries, and his vision of what a healthy relationship should look like. John Carter was a man of routine and quiet resilience. At 60, he had built a life of contentment, but it was a life that often felt lonely. A retired engineer, John spent his days tending to his garden, taking long walks, and indulging in his love for classic literature. His children, both grown and married, lived in different states, and while they called regularly, their busy lives meant visits were rare. It wasn't that John was unhappy, he had a peaceful existence, but something was missing. The evenings felt a little too quiet, and the dinners a little too solitary. After much contemplation and encouragement from his friends, he decided to step out of his comfort zone and explore the possibility of companionship. That's when one of his longtime friends suggested a blind date. Lisa, a 52-year-old divorcee, was described as vibrant, kind, and looking for a meaningful connection. Intrigued but nervous, John agreed. The date was set for a Saturday afternoon at a cozy local cafe. On the day of the meeting, John found himself standing in front of the mirror, second-guessing his outfit choices and rehearsing possible topics of conversation. It had been decades since his last date, and he wasn't sure what to expect. Arriving 15 minutes early, John chose a quiet corner table, ordered a cappuccino, and tried to calm the butterflies in his stomach. When Lisa walked in, she immediately exuded confidence. Her warm smile and friendly demeanor put John at ease. The conversation started smoothly. They exchanged pleasantries, shared bits of their life stories, and bonded over their mutual love of travel and old movies. John found himself relaxing, even feeling hopeful. Perhaps this blind date would be the start of something special. But just as John was starting to feel comfortable, Lisa steered the conversation in a direction that would change everything. What began as a lighthearted discussion soon turned into something far more serious and far more unexpected. As the conversation continued, John found himself drawn to Lisa's energy and charisma. She spoke passionately about her career as a marketing executive, her love for yoga, and her dream of traveling to Europe. John shared stories of his engineering days, his children's accomplishments, and the satisfaction he found in gardening. For a moment, everything felt natural. Their laughter filled the small cafe, and John began to feel a spark of optimism. Perhaps this date could turn into a genuine connection? Then, with a slight shift in her tone, Lisa leaned forward and said, I think it's important to be upfront about expectations. John, appreciating her honesty, nodded in agreement. He valued open communication and thought it was a refreshing approach. Lisa smiled warmly, but her next words changed the tone of the conversation. She began outlining what she referred to as a framework for a successful relationship. Her voice remained calm, but her words carried a weight that John hadn't anticipated. At first, he thought it might be something simple, shared values or communication styles. But as Lisa continued, it became clear that her expectations were far more detailed and unconventional. John listened attentively, trying to process her words without jumping to conclusions. He wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but a sense of unease began to creep in. What followed was the first of Lisa's 4 demands, and it was only the beginning of what would turn this promising blind date into an unforgettable experience for all the wrong reasons. Lisa's first demand was straightforward but surprising. She wanted a financial commitment to prove John's sincerity. She proposed that if they decided to continue seeing each other, John would need to deposit $10,000 into a shared account. This money, she explained, wasn't for her personal use, but a symbolic gesture of trust and dedication. John blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. He tried to mask his shock, responding with a polite, "That's interesting." Lisa smiled, seemingly oblivious to his discomfort, and continued explaining her reasoning. "I've been burned in the past," she said. "This isn't about money. It's about proving we're on the same page." John couldn't help but feel uneasy. He understood the need for trust in a relationship, but this felt transactional, as if love and commitment could be quantified in dollar signs. Lisa then moved on to her second demand. She dreamed of a romantic getaway to an exotic destination, specifically a 2-week cruise in the Mediterranean. While John agreed that such a trip sounded lovely, it was the expectation behind it that left him uneasy. Lisa expected John to cover the entire cost as a gesture of his ability to provide in a relationship. "I'll handle all the planning," she assured him, "but this is non-negotiable." John found himself nodding politely, but internally he was grappling with the implications of her requests. Could he really agree to these terms? The third demand was the most shocking yet. Lisa explained that she would need full control over their finances if their relationship progressed to cohabitation or marriage. She outlined her plan to allocate John an allowance for personal expenses while she managed the rest of their combined income. "I'm very organized," she said confidently. "This will ensure we're always financially stable." By this point, John's mind was racing. He couldn't fathom relinquishing control of his finances to someone he'd just met, let alone under such rigid terms. Finally, Lisa unveiled her fourth and final demand. Even if they moved in together or married, she would require them to maintain separate bedrooms. "I value my personal space," she explained. "Sharing a bed disrupts my sleep, and this arrangement would help us maintain independence." While John respected the idea of personal space, the culmination of her demands painted a picture that was far removed from the partnership he had envisioned. Sitting across from Lisa, John felt a growing knot of unease. The woman who had initially seemed so warm and engaging now felt more like a negotiator presenting terms for a business merger. Despite his polite demeanor, John knew he couldn't agree to these conditions. They clashed with his values and his vision of what a relationship should be. He took a deep breath, prepared to navigate the conversation with as much kindness as possible. But he was already certain of one thing. This was not the connection he was looking for. John took a deep breath, letting Lisa finish her explanations. He appreciated her honesty. It was clear she knew exactly what she wanted in a relationship. But as she looked at him expectantly, waiting for his response, John knew he had to be true to himself. He began by thanking Lisa for her transparency. "I admire your confidence and your clarity about what you're looking for," he said sincerely. "It's not easy to put everything out there like that." Lisa smiled, seemingly reassured, but her expression shifted as John continued. "However," he said gently, "I don't think I'm the right person to meet those expectations. My vision for a relationship is built on mutual compromise, trust, and shared experiences, not financial commitments or rigid rules." Lisa's smile faltered, but she nodded politely. I understand, she said, though there was a hint of disappointment in her tone. John offered a polite excuse about needing to leave for another appointment. He paid for their coffee, thanked Lisa for her time, and wished her the best in her search for the right partner. As he stepped out of the cafe and into the fresh air, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. Walking back to his car, John reflected on the experience. While he had been hopeful about the date, he realized how important it was to trust his instincts and stand by his values. Lisa was confident and self-assured, but her demands highlighted a fundamental incompatibility between them. At 60, John knew what he wanted from a relationship: companionship built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine connection. He wasn't looking for a relationship defined by financial transactions or rigid conditions. As he drove home, John felt a renewed sense of clarity. Solitude, he reminded himself, was not the enemy. It was far better to wait for the right connection than to settle for a relationship that felt unbalanced or transactional. In the days that followed, John found himself reflecting on the realities of dating later in life. He knew many people carried emotional scars and guarded themselves with expectations, but he believed true relationships were built on trust and mutual understanding. For anyone venturing into the dating world at this stage of life, John had a piece of advice: know your worth, trust your instincts, and never settle for a relationship that compromises your peace of mind. In the end, John realized that stepping out of his comfort zone had been worthwhile. Not because he found the connection he was looking for, but because it reminded him of the importance of staying true to himself.